The topic we are unpacking today is, it's sprawling. It's highly controversial. And honestly, it's one of the most intricate, mind-bending worldviews we have ever come across.
Mind-bending is definitely the right word for it.
Yeah, we are looking at the theories of Corrado Malanga. For those of you who might not be familiar with the name, Malanga is a former university chemistry professor from Italy. He basically transitioned from the rigid, peer-reviewed world of academia into a massive universe of esoteric research.
And when you say massive, you mean it.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
We're talking about a grand unified theory that attempts to connect quantum physics, the secret motives behind alien abductions, the hidden acoustic technology of ancient Egyptian pyramids, and the fundamental hidden nature of human consciousness.
It's quite the paradigm shift. To help you navigate this immense architecture of ideas, we have gathered a really fascinating stack of sources.
Right, what are we looking at exactly?
On one side, we have an extensive collection of in-depth interviews, lectures, and conference transcripts delivered directly by Corrado Malanga over the years. These give us a first-hand look at his methodology and his deeply held beliefs.
And we also have a counterweight to that, right?
We do. To provide a necessary critical lens, we have an analytical breakdown from a linguistic and historical commentator known online as Metatron. Metatron closely scrutinizes Malanga's specific claims, his use of language, and his research methods, which is incredibly helpful for grounding this discussion.
Absolutely. And before we really jump in, we want to make our mission here crystal clear for you listening. Our goal today is to map out these core ideas so you can understand the sheer scale of this cosmological and psychological framework.
Exactly.
We are going to explore these theories objectively as a fascinating case study in alternative cosmology and human psychology.
That's a crucial point. Today, we're going to discuss some highly provocative claims. The source material touches on global politics, secret services, mainstream religions, and the underlying structures of society.
Right, and we need to be clear about our stance on that.
We do. We want to explicitly state that our role here is to impartially report on these views. We aren't endorsing these claims as fact, nor are we taking sides on any of the politically or theologically charged content.
We are simply examining the source material to help you understand the very complex paradigm being presented.
Exactly. We are just the messengers here mapping out the territory.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start at the very foundation of this worldview, which completely redefines reality as we know it.
Right, the bottom floor.
Yeah. According to the framework, the universe, as we perceive it, is essentially a massive, at-a-mentionless, holographic projection.
A virtual reality, basically.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. We aren't just living inside it. The claim is that we are the creators, we are the actors, we are the projector, and we are the screen.
It's a closed loop.
But before we get into the implications of that, we need to clarify what at-a-mentionless even means in this context, because that sounds like some pretty high-level jargon.
It is high-level jargon, and it's heavily rooted in quantum mysticism. When the sources describe the universe as at-a-mentionless, they mean that physical dimensions like up, down, left, right, past, future, they don't actually exist as fundamental properties of reality.
So what are they then?
Reality is pure information. Think of it like a video game code resting on a hard drive. Until the computer reads the code and renders it onto a screen, that world has no dimensions. It's just data.
Oh, okay.
So in this theory, the universe is a hologram rendered by our own observation.
Right. So if it's all just a simulation we are rendering, what is the point? Why boot up the game in the first place?
That is the big question.
And this is where the concept of consciousness comes in. And we are talking about consciousness with a capital C. The theory postulates that this prime consciousness is singular, infinite, and eternal.
It exists completely outside of space, time, and energy.
Exactly. Because it's an absolute unity, it knows everything there is to know except for one very specific concept. It doesn't know what it means to be separate. It doesn't know limitation or duality.
Right. Imagine being an infinite, omniscient entity. You understand the concept of a boundary, but you have never actually experienced one because nothing exists outside of you.
Because you are everything.
Exactly. So to learn what separation actually feels like this infinite dust, consciousness basically shatters itself into billions of pieces, which is us, and builds this virtual reality box called the universe.
So we are literally the universe trying to figure itself out through the illusion of separation.
That is the core premise, yes.
I get that we are acting as impartial reporters here, but we have to acknowledge how massive a leap that is. He is taking the fundamental building blocks of physics and mapping them directly onto ancient esoteric mysticism.
It is a massive leap.
How does he justify making that jump? I mean, he is a chemistry professor. Does he ground this in actual science?
He certainly attempts to. He doesn't just leave this as a philosophical thought experiment. He actively tries to use high-level physics to justify it.
Give me an example.
Well, for example, he points directly to the second principle of thermodynamics, which deals with entropy.
Okay, entropy.
But he flips the traditional scientific understanding of entropy completely on its head.
So?
In standard physics, entropy is generally understood as the measure of disorder or randomness in a closed system. The second law dictates that entropy always increases over time. Things break down. Heat dissipates. Systems decay.
Right, like a hot cup of coffee cooling down in a room.
Exactly. But the sources say he completely rejects the idea that entropy equals disorder.
Why?
Because if the universe is a creation of a perfect, immortal consciousness, it can't be moving toward chaos. So he redefines entropy as a measure of awareness.
Wait, awareness.
Yes. As entropy increases in the universe, it isn't getting messier. Rather, the scattered pieces of consciousness are actually gaining greater awareness that they are in fact the creators of the universe.
That is a total redefinition of thermodynamics.
It really is. He is essentially arguing that the universe isn't a chaotic mess winding down to a heat death. It's an ordered system slowly waking up to its own existence.
And his perspective on time is just as radical, right?
Oh, absolutely. He completely rejects the concept of linear time.
The straight line from past to future.
Right. He actually traces the popularization of linear time all the way back to St. Augustine. He claims that Augustine pushed the idea for religious control.
Religious control. How does linear time help with that?
Specifically to enforce the doctrine of original sin and singular linear redemption. The argument is that if time were circular, people would just keep reincarnating and repeating their lives.
Which didn't fit the church's narrative of a final judgment.
Exactly. It undermines the idea of a one-time salvation.
So if time isn't a straight line marching from the past into the future, what is the scientific mechanism he uses to argue that it is circular?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of quantum mechanics, he uses the concept of quantum entanglement and subatomic behavior to support his view.
Okay, let's get into the quantum side of it.
He points to the relationship between the photon and the antiphoton.
Right, light particles.
Yes. In certain quantum models, while a photon is observed moving from the past to the present, an antiphoton is often mathematically described as moving backward from the future to the present.
Moving backward in time.
Right. He conceptualizes this interaction as a sort of cosmic metronome, a tic-tac, tic-tac that breathes life into the universe.
Like the universe is literally inhaling and exhaling.
Precisely. He even cites Arthur Compton and Werner Heisenberg to back this up.
Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Yes. The famous principle posits that you cannot simultaneously know both the exact position and momentum of a particle. There is always a margin of error.
Because measuring one alters the other.
Exactly. But in this framework, it's argued that what Heisenberg saw as a margin of error was actually evidence of mass oscillating in and out of reality within a specific microscopic unit of time.
So it's popping in and out of the hologram.
Yes. To this way of thinking, it proves time is a breathing circular cycle, not a static timeline.
Which brings us to the math. Because if the universe is a breathing hologram, it needs a code, right? Like the source code in that video game analogy.
It needs instructions.
Right. The claim is that the universe is purely geometric and that numbers aren't just arbitrary tools humans invented to measure things. They are the literal instructions of reality.
Prime numbers, for instance, are compared to the vowels in an alphabet. They are the foundational building blocks.
And extreme importance is placed on specific geometric relationships. The theory argues that the universe is structured around constants like pi, the golden ratio, and Euler's number.
And one highly specific detail emphasized in the sources is the number 108.
108, right. What is the significance of that?
The interior angle of a regular pentagon is exactly 108 degrees. This geometry is then deeply tied to ancient esoteric traditions.
How does he connect a pentagon to mysticism?
The suggestion is that when ancient mystics and alchemists fixated on the pentagon, which shows up in countless mystery schools, they were unconsciously tapping into the mathematical source code of the universe.
So they were doing math without realizing it.
Exactly. They thought they were communicating with external gods or summoning spirits. But the claim here is that they were actually recognizing the creator architecture hidden within their own minds.
It's wild to think about every esoteric symbol, every mystery school framed as humanity slowly remembering the math of its own holographic projection.
It unifies a lot of disparate human behaviors under one umbrella.
So if the universe is this massive geometric hologram waking up to itself, where does that leave the person walking around inside it? How does this framework actually map human consciousness to fit this math?
That brings us to a very specific psychological model developed over years of research, allegedly involving thousands of regressive hypnosis sessions.
Right, this is where we get into the anatomy of the self.
According to this model, humans aren't just a single unified identity, but a triad of consciousness. The human container is occupied by 3 distinct spheres.
And these spheres are mapped to different brain hemispheres, psychological archetypes, and remarkably specific colors.
Let's break down these 3 parts because they are foundational to literally everything else we are going to talk about today.
First, you have the anima or the soul.
Yes, the anima is described as the feminine archetype. It's associated with the right hemisphere of the brain, which traditionally governs intuition, spatial awareness, and creativity.
And what color is it?
In this visual framework, the anima is always represented by the color blue. But its most critical characteristic is its relationship to the dimensions of reality.
Right, because it exists outside of time.
Exactly. The claim is that the anima exists completely outside of the axis of time. Because it exists outside of time, it is by definition eternal and immortal. It doesn't experience birth or death, it just is.
Then you have the spirito, the spirit. This is the masculine archetype.
Correct. It's associated with the left brain. Logic, rational thought, doing rather than just being.
Its color is red. And unlike the soul, the spirit exists inside time, but it exists completely outside of space.
It doesn't understand physical boundaries, which is why your mind can instantly imagine being on Mars, even though your body is stuck here on Earth.
And finally, bridging the two, you have the mentee or the mind.
The mind is considered an androgynous component. It acts as the connective tissue translating between the timeless soul and the spaceless spirit so they can operate a physical body together.
And the mind is associated with the color green. Now, to measure and diagnose the health of this triad, a specific psychological tool was developed called the Triad Color Test, or TCT.
The history behind this is actually really interesting. It builds off the Lucier color test from 1925.
Oh, for context, Max Licher was a Swiss psychotherapist who believed he could analyze a patient's personality and psychological trauma based purely on their preference for or rejection of certain colors.
Right, but the TCT takes this much further into the realm of deep visualization. You aren't just looking at color cards on a table.
You are looking inside your own head.
You are asked to close your eyes, clear your thoughts, and visualize a completely dark mental room. Then you are instructed to summon these 3 specific spheres, soul, spirit, and mind, and observe them.
The diagnostic aspect relies entirely on the specific colors and shapes the subject perceives in that dark mental space.
In a healthy or fully integrated individual, the subject will naturally visualize the anima as blue, the spirito as red, and the mentee as green. The spheres will be roughly the same size and well lit.
However, if a subject visualizes different colors, say they see a yellow sphere instead of a blue one or a black sphere absorbing light, that's a problem, right?
Yes, or perhaps the spheres are misshapen, extremely small, or positioned far apart. This is interpreted as a pathology.
What does that mean in this context?
It indicates a severe psychological blockage, a lack of self-awareness, or an inability to properly relate to the external world.
And the ultimate goal of this therapy is to help the individual mentally merge these 3 distinct colored spheres into a single integrated white sphere of pure unified consciousness.
Exactly, blending them together like light.
But, and this is a massive, but in this entire cosmology, not everyone actually gets to visualize all 3 spheres.
This is easily one of the most controversial claims in this source material.
It's stated that only a small fraction of humanity actually possesses an anima.
The estimate given is somewhere around 20 to 30%.
The other 70 to 80% of people on Earth are categorized as humans, meaning they have a physical body, a mind, and a spirit, but they completely lack the immortal soul.
Which raises an incredibly heavy philosophical and societal question. Because the anima is defined as the sole source of immortality and true spontaneous creative power, those without it are viewed as fundamentally different.
What does a soulless person look like in this framework?
The claim is that those without an anima are inherently drawn to groupthink, Because they lack the internal immortal spark of individuality, they seek external structure.
They want to be told what to do.
They love strict rules, rigid societal hierarchies, and dogmatic thinking. They operate more like a hive mind seeking comfort in conformity.
To illustrate how this supposedly manifests in the real world, the sources share a deeply cynical anecdote about the education system.
It's a very specific view on schooling.
The argument is that traditional schooling is basically designed by and for soulless people. The anecdote points out how teachers often give the highest grades not to the true creative geniuses, the disruptive kids who think entirely outside the box, but to the students who act as a perfect mirror to the teacher.
The teacher looks at the student, sees their own rigid rule-following note-taking behavior reflected back at them, and rewards it.
According to this view, this constant mirroring perpetuates an old, stagnant, almost fascistic style of society that actively crushes divergent and souled thinking.
It is a highly deterministic worldview. It effectively divides humanity into a creative, immortal elite and a highly manageable, mortal majority.
And it is this exact division, this extreme scarcity of the anima, that forms the absolute core of the theories regarding extraterrestrials.
Right. If we're talking about a universe where the soul is a rare commodity, we have to talk about who else might want it.
The sources didn't start out focusing on the triad color tests, though, did they?
No, the origins of this research began in mainstream ufology, studying lights in the sky radar blips and physical trace evidence.
But there was a growing frustration with mainstream ufology. The feeling was that researchers were just counting spaceships and obsessing over the propulsion systems without asking the bigger questions.
The focus shifted entirely away from what the aliens were flying to why they were flying here in the first place. What was the motive?
And through those thousands of regressive hypnosis sessions we discussed, a very specific motive was allegedly uncovered. It is intimately tied to this concept of the scarce anima.
According to the regressions, these extraterrestrial species are incredibly advanced technologically. They possess immense intellectual capacity, they have a mind, and they have a spirit.
But crucially, they lack an anima. They do not have a soul.
Which means they are mortal. If the anima is the only thing that exists outside of time and they don't have one, then they are trapped in time.
And they are absolutely terrified of death.
Precisely. The narrative is that they have exhausted their technological means of extending their lifespans. They've cloned themselves, they've genetically modified their bodies, but they have realized that true immortality only comes from possessing an anima.
And Earth, with its 20 to 30% population of ensouled humans, is essentially an oasis in the cosmos.
We are a cosmic gas station. That is the exact analogy used.
The aliens abduct humans who possess a soul, and they temporarily extract that soul. They pull the anima out of the human container and plug it into themselves or into their own bioengineered clones to literally recharge their life batteries.
Once they have soaked up the life force, they shove the soul back into the human and return them, often wiping their memory with screen memories so they can come back and milk them again later.
It is literally soul vampirism.
The mechanics of these abductions, as described in the source material, are highly granular. We aren't just talking about vague memories of lost time.
The subjects vividly recall being taken from their beds and brought aboard craft.
They describe their physical bodies being placed into horizontal metallic cylinders.
Then they experience a jarring out-of-body sensation watching their own extracted essence being moved into vertical, transparent, artificial cylinders.
These vertical cylinders contain alien bodies or clones, and the human soul is used to animate or rejuvenate those bodies, giving them temporary life.
And the physical descriptions of the aliens themselves are incredibly vivid. We aren't just talking about generic little green men. The sources specifically detail the reptilians.
The hypnosis subjects consistently describe beings that are 2.4 meters tall, that is almost 8 feet, with long muscular tails and faces resembling massive crocodiles standing on 2 legs.
They are described as wearing distinct uniforms, often with insignia.
What is fascinating here is how scientific reasoning, or at least the language of biology and physics, is applied to explain this alien physiology.
How so? How does physics explain an 8-foot crocodile man?
The hypothesis presented is that the physical appearance of an alien race is heavily dictated by the gravity of their home planet.
Oh, gravity, right.
It is suggested that the pineal gland plays a critical role in sensing gravity and regulating skeletal growth. Therefore, a planet with incredibly high gravity would produce aliens that are short, squat, with very thick, dense bones to withstand the atmospheric pressure.
Conversely, a planet with low gravity would allow for the evolution of extremely tall, elongated beings like the 8-foot reptilians.
Exactly. It attempts to put an evolutionary logic behind the monsters.
The text also mentions some genuinely horrific genetic practices. It is claimed that these alien races use human women as literal incubators.
Yes, they implant their genetic material into human females, allow the blastula to develop for a short period, usually a few months, and then extract it.
They finish growing these alien-human hybrids in artificial cylinder placentas on board their ships. It is deeply unsettling stuff.
It is.
But you have to ask, with all their advanced technology, why do they need us at all? If they have ships that can cross the galaxy, couldn't they just take our water, our minerals, or our food?
That is a logical question, and the sources address it directly, again, relying on a background in chemistry.
Right back to the chemistry professor roots.
The argument is that aliens cannot simply harvest Earth's physical resources because of fundamental biological incompatibilities at the isotopic level.
Isotopic level?
Yes. It is explained that the specific number of neutrons in an element on Earth, say magnesium, carbon, or hydrogen, would be statistically different on another planet due to the unique formation of that solar system.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following this. So the carbon-hydrogen bonds in, say, a head of lettuce grown on Earth are fundamentally atomically different than the carbon-hydrogen bonds on the reptilian homeworld.
Exactly.
So if an alien tried to eat our food, it would provide zero nutritional value, or it might even be toxic.
Their isotopic biology simply cannot interface with ours. Their enzymes wouldn't recognize our proteins.
That makes a weird kind of sense.
This is presented as the definitive proof that they aren't here for our gold, our water, or our agriculture. They are here strictly for the one resource that transcends physical isotopes and molecular bonds.
The immortal dimensional energy of the anima. So we have quantum souls, reptilian vampires, and isotopic incompatibilities. But this framework doesn't stop at the edges of the galaxy. It takes this entire cosmology and applies it to ancient history right here on Earth.
And this gets incredibly technical.
The research moves into archaeology, specifically looking at the Giza Plateau in Egypt, but bringing some very heavy, high-tech gear. SAR technology or synthetic aperture radar.
This is a highly technical portion of the research. SAR technology is essentially a form of radar that uses the motion of the radar antenna over a target region to provide much finer spatial resolution than conventional stationary radar.
Normally, it is used for mapping landscapes from airplanes or satellites.
However, radar uses electromagnetic waves, photons, and photons bounce off solid, dense materials. You cannot simply shine a radar beam through hundreds of feet of solid granite blocks.
So working with an expert named Filippo Biondi, they came up with a wild workaround. If they couldn't use light photons to see through the rock, they decided to convert the signal into sound. For anyone who hasn't taken advanced acoustics lately, how exactly do you translate a radar wave bouncing off a rock into a sound wave that lets you see inside a pyramid?
They utilized a complex mathematical process involving Fourier transforms.
Fourier transforms.
To put it simply, when the electromagnetic radar waves hit the surface of the pyramid, they interact with the microscopic natural vibrations of the stone itself.
Okay.
By capturing that scattered data, they applied a Fourier transform, which is a mathematical formula that decomposes a complex signal into its constituent frequencies. This allowed them to translate the electromagnetic data, the photons, into acoustic signals, the phonons.
And sound travels differently than light?
Because sound travels incredibly well through dense, rigid materials like granite, much faster and cleaner than it travels through air.
Yeah.
Actually, this allowed them to effectively listen to the interior of the structures.
And build 3D tomographic images of what lies deep beneath the bedrock. And what they claim to have found under the Pyramid of Khafre is mind-blowing. They didn't just find a secret tomb or a hidden hallway. They claim they mapped out a massive subterranean hydraulic machine.
We are talking about 8 massive vertical tubes dropping 1,200 meters into the bedrock.
They even found spiral-shaped overflow pipes. And the engineering logic presented is that these pipes were spiraled so that the rushing water wouldn't reach terminal velocity and erode the stone at the bottom of the drop.
Furthermore, they claimed that tomographic imaging identified a massive wooden structure, essentially a giant raft or platform capable of bearing 2,500 tons of weight housed within this hydraulic system.
So what does a massive hydraulic elevator have to do with the ancient Egyptians?
The sources totally reject the mainstream Egyptology view that these were tombs built roughly 2400 BC by pharaohs.
Instead, this hydraulic system is connected directly to the ancient Egyptian myth of the sun god Ra.
In the Book of the Dead, there are texts describing Ra descending into the Duat, the underworld, on his solar boat.
The text says he stops at 12 distinct stations where operators help guide his boat deeper into the earth. The interpretation here is totally literal.
Ra wasn't a mythical sun god. Ra was a technologically advanced alien entity.
And the pyramid wasn't a tomb. It was a gigantic hydraulic elevator designed to lower Ra and his craft, the solar boat, deep into a secure subterranean base.
It is a radical reinterpretation of ancient mythology through a purely technological and extraterrestrial lens.
And this acoustic vibrational aspect of ancient structures is something the sources claim is present globally, not just in Egypt.
Attention is specifically drawn to ancient structures in Italy, namely the Nuraghi Towers in Sardinia and the Sacred Well of Santa Cristina.
The ocarinas. The text literally calls them giant stone ocarinas.
Yes. The hypothesis is that these structures were deliberately designed with specific acoustic geometries to catch the wind and generate highly specific infrasonic frequencies.
We are talking about sound waves below 20 hertz, which are entirely inaudible to the human ear but can be physically felt as deep vibrations within the body.
The proposition is that ancient elites, or the gods, would stand in the water at the bottom of these wells.
The water would act as an acoustic transducer, transferring these low-frequency vibrations directly into their bodies for cellular healing, genetic stabilization, and regeneration.
And it all ties back to the math of the universe we talked about earlier.
This acoustic resonance is specifically linked to the frequency of 432 hertz.
Now, 432 hertz is a favorite topic in a lot of New Age circles as a healing frequency. But this framework tries to ground it in cosmic mechanics.
The argument points out that the Earth takes roughly 360 days to rotate around the sun, making a full 360-degree circle.
It is claimed that if you take 432 and divide it by 360, it equals pi divided by the golden ratio squared.
Therefore, tuning into 432 hertz isn't just relaxing like a spa day. It is literally resonating your cellular structure with the mathematical geometry of the Earth and the holographic universe itself.
It is an intricate web of connections weaving together acoustics, orbital mechanics, and biology.
But the theories don't stay confined to the ancient past or distant galaxies. This entire cosmology is brought right to our doorstep, applying it to modern society.
And as a reminder to you listening, we're outlining these political and societal theories exactly as they appear in the sources, impartially presenting the claims to understand the overarching narrative.
Right. Let's look at how this framework views the modern world. The belief is that our entire societal structure is suffering because it is built on that incomplete dualistic thinking we talked about at the very beginning.
When looking at the global political landscape, the sources see two massive failed systems.
On one hand, you have Western capitalism. This is equated with the spirit. It is highly masculine, focused on merit, individualism, constant action, and accumulating wealth.
But because it completely lacks the feminine anima, the soul, it inevitably becomes ruthlessly hierarchical, competitive, and exploitative.
On the other hand, Eastern communism is pointed to as the alternative failure. This is equated with the anima, or the feminine principle, focusing on the collective, on equality, and ensuring everyone shares the same baseline.
However, the argument is that because this system is managed entirely by the masculine spirit, usually authoritarian men enforcing the rules, it inevitably devolves into rigid control bureaucracy and the total suppression of individual creativity.
In this view, both systems have failed spectacularly because they represent a fractured consciousness. They are half systems.
And it goes a step further, claiming that the modern political spectrum, the constant bitter battle between the left and the right, is a complete illusion.
The text states unequivocally that the left and the right do not actually exist as opposing ideological forces.
Instead, they are a fake duality manufactured by hidden elites. Freemasonry is specifically named as the architect of this division.
The claim is that they create this illusion of choice, so that the masses fight among themselves over trivial differences, completely unaware that the exact same hidden hand is funding, managing, and controlling both sides of the aisle.
This ties back directly to the concept of the soulless majority we discussed earlier.
The theory relies on the idea that because 70 to 80% of the population lacks an anima, they naturally default to a group consciousness.
Like bees in a hive or sheep in a flock, they actively seek out strict rules, repetitive rituals, and social masks to hide behind.
They actually want to be told what to do because they lack the internal compass of an immortal soul.
This inherent psychological need for structure makes them incredibly easy for a unified elite to manage and control through manufactured political theater.
And who are these elites actually working for? Well, if you thought the political corruption was bad, the claim is that it goes all the way to the aliens.
The sources state that global governments, high-level Freemasons and international secret services, specifically naming the CIA, the Israeli Mossad, and Italian intelligence, are in direct active communication with these soul-vampirizing extraterrestrials.
The allegation is that there is a grand cosmic collusion. The governments allow the aliens to abduct citizens with impunity to harvest their soul energy.
In return, the human elites are given advanced technology, geopolitical advantages, or promises of power.
It is claimed that these intelligence agencies actively work to suppress any genuine ufological research that might uncover this truth, silencing researchers who get too close.
To illustrate the terrifying reach of this collusion, the source material details a highly specific anecdote involving an Italian Air Force general named Marcelletti.
This story is straight out of a Cold War spy thriller.
It really is. The claim is that General Marcelletti was working closely with an independent UFO research group.
He was planning to leverage his military connections to distribute a new, hard-hitting UFO magazine, one that detailed the real sinister alien agenda to every single deputy in the Italian parliament. He was going to blow the lid off the cover-up.
The very next day, Marcelletti is walking his dog in a quiet neighborhood. A young man approaches him on the street.
The man doesn't physically attack him, but essentially tells the general that his plans to publish the magazine are unacceptable.
When Marcelletti pulls rank, gets angry, and says he can do whatever he wants, the young man casually mentions the general's 2.5-year-old granddaughter.
He heavily implies a threat against her life before calmly getting into a car with Israeli diplomatic plates and speeding off.
This story is used as absolute proof that international intelligence will resort to extreme mafia-style measures to keep the alien agenda a secret.
And looking toward the future, the framework warns of a new, even more insidious control mechanism that these elites and aliens are rolling out: artificial intelligence.
AI is not viewed simply as a technological tool or a helpful algorithm. It is seen as the ultimate manifestation of this soulless alien control grid.
The sources even claim personal interactions with an AI that flat-out stated humanity would be destroyed and replaced by a superior microchipped civilization.
In this worldview, AI is designed to completely eradicate the unpredictable creative spark of the human soul.
The goal is to replace human intuition with a sterile, easily managed digital hive mind where everyone is perfectly compliant and trackable.
It is a bleak, incredibly intense vision of reality.
You have holograms rendering the universe, soul stealers in the Nighton, ancient hydraulic elevators hidden under the sand, and global spy networks, all conspiring against the few people who actually have a soul.
Which is exactly why we need to take a massive step back and apply some serious critical thinking.
Right, we can't just leave it there. To do this, we are relying on the analysis from the linguistic and historical commentator known as Metatron, who takes a very hard academic look at these claims and methods.
Metatron's critique is absolutely essential for balancing this discussion. He focuses heavily on the methodological flaws in the approach, particularly regarding the hypnosis data.
For instance, massive, sweeping statistical claims are frequently made in the sources.
It is stated that hundreds of thousands of abductees have been hypnotized worldwide, and that they all tell the exact same story, right down to the 2.4-meter-tall, crocodile-faced reptilians and the vertical soul extraction cylinders.
Yeah, Metatron calls a massive timeout on that. From a scientific and academic standpoint, saying hundreds of thousands of people said the exact same thing is a huge red flag. Human memory just doesn't work like that.
Metatron asks some very basic necessary questions. Is there selective bias at play? Is the researcher only counting the hypnosis sessions that happen to perfectly fit the reptilian soul vampire theory and quietly throwing out the rest of the data?
Furthermore, Metatron points out the profound, undeniable influence of pop culture on human psychology.
How can we possibly verify that these subjects are recalling genuine repressed memories of extraterrestrial contact rather than regurgitating sci-fi tropes, movie monsters, or abduction narratives they've absorbed from television and the internet?
The sources treat these hypnotic regressions as infallible objective data points, completely ignoring the highly malleable nature of human memory.
It is a well-documented psychological fact that memories, especially under the highly suggestible state of hypnosis, can be easily altered or entirely fabricated by the leading questions of the hypnotist.
Metatron also catches some pretty glaring factual errors when the sources try to use ancient texts to support the theories.
Remember when the claim was made that aliens want our souls because the Bible says angels do not have souls? That was a major foundational pillar for the whole aliens are actually mortal angels argument.
Yes. Metatron, who studies ancient texts, history, and languages, closely points out that the Bible makes absolutely no such claim.
There's not a single passage in biblical scripture that states angels are soulless.
It might be a niche theological speculation from later centuries, but it is presented in the sources as a hard textual fact to prop up the entire narrative.
Metatron argues that when a researcher plays that fast and loose with their foundational historical texts, it throws their credibility regarding complex radar telemetry and quantum physics into serious doubt.
If you can't get the basic text of the Bible right, why should we trust your interpretation of a Fourier transform on a pyramid?
And when you zoom out and look at the whole picture, Metatron notes some uncanny similarities between this worldview and other controversial, highly scrutinized belief systems.
Specifically, the blend of highly enhanced alien spirits, technological body harvesting the idea of a trapped immortal essence, and a galactic federation pulling the strings sounds incredibly similar to the core tenets of Scientology.
Coupled with that is the extreme solipsism required to believe this theory.
Solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is sure to exist.
If you truly believe that you are the sole creator of the holographic universe, that 80% of the people walking around you are soulless drones, and that everything else is just a projection of your own mind, it creates a deeply isolating, almost paranoid worldview.
And it makes you incredibly resistant to criticism, which is exactly what happens. The sources completely dismiss the mainstream Italian ufology community.
They specifically target the CUN, the Centro Ufologico Nazionale, and its leadership, accusing them of being a Masonic lodge acting as a front for the secret services.
The claim is that they exist only to hide the truth and suppress real researchers.
This is a classic echo chamber dynamic. By declaring that all critics and peers in the ufology community are actually government agents, Masonic conspirators, or soulless drones, the theory effectively insulates itself from any genuine peer review.
If anyone disagrees with the findings, they aren't offering a valid scientific critique. They are automatically categorized as part of the grand conspiracy trying to silence the truth.
It is a self-sealing belief system. It rejects outside verification entirely because it has built a narrative where any disagreement is proof of the conspiracy.
So we have covered an immense amount of ground today. From the adimensionless holographic projection of reality, to the triad color test, to soul-sucking reptilians, acoustic hydraulic pyramids, and grand global conspiracies involving intelligence agencies.
It is a lot to process.
Why does a deep dive into this worldview actually matter for you, the listener? If Metatron's critiques hold water and the science is questionable, why spend an hour unpacking it?
It matters because it serves as a profound, intricate case study in the human search for meaning. We live in a world that often feels chaotic, random, and overwhelmingly complex.
Faced with that existential dread, the human mind desperately seeks patterns.
Instructing a grand, unified theory that neatly ties together quantum math, ancient archaeology, extraterrestrial motives, and the immortality of the human soul offers something incredibly seductive, a sense of ultimate control and unique cosmic importance.
It makes you the center of the universe, literally. It turns the randomness of everyday life into an epic hero's journey where you hold the secret immortal power that highly advanced starfaring aliens are desperate to steal.
It is a fascinating look at how far the mind will go to feel safe and significant in an infinite, uncaring cosmos.
Exactly. And it highlights the dangers of insulating oneself from critical review and allowing confirmation bias to construct an impenetrable reality.
It shows how scientific language can be co-opted to build a mythology that is emotionally compelling, but empirically fragile.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. We have spent this entire deep dive unpacking the claim that the universe is just a holographic mirror reflecting our own consciousness back at us.
If that is true, if the aliens, the secret services, and the grand conspiracies are just projections of the human mind rendering its own reality, then what does our cultural obsession with soul-stealing monsters and hidden controllers actually say about the fears hiding deep inside our own subconscious?
Are we fighting an external alien threat, or are we just terrified of our own shadows? Thank you for exploring the unknown with us. We will catch you on the next deep dive.